What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Titletown Talk Therapy. I'm your host, Ian Ewing. We are probably all feeling the same way today after the Packers choke away an absolute heartbreaker to the Chicago Bears. The Packers JV team took it all the way to the final bell, despite some of the craziest injury luck that I've ever seen in my entire life last week. And came through this game, played well for about 58 minutes, and when it mattered most, they choked the game away. This game was shades of the 2014 NFC Championship game all over again, obviously with lower stakes. In the end, this game, sucked, but there's still a path for the Packers that we'll talk about. Just an absolutely gut-wrenching loss, and you guys will hear me say it in this one. Probably going to repeat myself a few times. I got a little bit of a headache. Probably going to be a little bit of a shorter episode, but there were still some massive positives to take away from this game, and we'll talk about them. Let's start with this, right? The series of unfortunate events. And if even one of these plays go differently, they win the game. So, Warren Brinson, he gets a sack on 3rd and 20. And that would have kept the Bears. That was when the Bears kicked their field goal to make it 16-9, okay? Had Warren Brinson actually sacked Caleb on that one, now he did, right? But he grabbed a little bit of face mask on that one. If he just sacks them there, they're out of field goal range. They're going to have to go for it. And there's no way they're going to, convert a 4th and 30. At least I would hope not. Again, they do that and the game's over, right? Never even get the field goal. Then obviously the biggest one was the Romeo Doubs missed recovery in the onside kick. That was one of the most pathetic attempts at an onside kick that I've ever seen. I was on the hands team in high school. You are literally taught at the JV level not to do that. I've seen calls for Rich Bisaccia's job today. I think that's pretty warranted, to be honest. And I'm not one to call for people's jobs very often. It just was a brutal play, honestly. There's not really another way to put it. I will say this. I think that Romeo deserves a lot of blame for it, right? But as I've heard other podcasters say today, I've heard other people mention it on Twitter as well. I've seen it. You have to blame coaching to some point. They need to know what they're doing on that play. And Romeo took some blame after the game. I give him props, by the way, to actually even talk to the media. Keyshawn Nixon was a baby, and he didn't talk to the media after the game, right? You recover that onside kick. In the modern NFL, it's a 92% chance of recovering it, and the game's over, right? Then there was the touchdown on 4th and 3 to tie the game. Missed and blown coverage on the back end. Caleb has nowhere to go, right? He's about to get sacked. Throws it up a prayer to the corner of the end zone, and his guy's there because of blown coverage. Overtime, 3rd and 1. Malik has Christian Watson open. For some reason, he takes a hit and tries to run. And then on 4th down, Malik Willis fumbles the ball, and the Bears get the ball at the 40, I think. And Malik did admit after the game that he changed the cadence and he didn't communicate it to Sean Ryan. Again, you can hear it in my voice, guys. I'm just devastated by this. I'll make it hurt a little bit more for you guys before we get into the positives, right? To add to the insanity, according to Next Gen Stats, the Bears' probability to win this game was down to 0.5% before they recovered the onside kick. So again, not 5%, not 1.5%, but 0.5%. So that's the 5th most improbable win in the Next Gen Stats era, so since 2016. So again, the Packers, it was their game to win. They had it. This was the most improbable loss that I've ever seen in my entire life. And it's even worse than the NFC Championship game, if you ask me. Now, obviously, the stakes were way higher, but, this game never should have happened. At least with that game against the Seahawks, right? Like, they got Russell Wilson, who at the time was playing really well. Caleb had a bad game, and he made a couple of really, really good throws at the end to win it, right? Before I get into players of the game, right, I just want to say, too, this game followed the same script as the Browns game and the Panthers game this year, right? And you could really say the Broncos, too, right? Whether it was a total, complete collapse or, just insane improbabilities coming true, right? We talked about the Browns game, the Jordan Love interception, right? All they have to do is punt there and they win the game. They have a chance to win it, and the field goal gets blocked, right? Then the Panthers game, they go 0 for 5 in the red zone, which we'll talk about in a minute. Happened again today. It's just it was one of the most improbable losses that I've ever seen in my entire life. The Broncos game too, they're up 9 in the third quarter, and then their entire soul of the team gets hurt, right? It just feels like every piece of bad luck that could possibly happen to this Packers team has happened in the last, 3 quarters, right? In that time period. So again, they start out by losing Jordan Love with 8 minutes left in the second quarter. And by the way, I would call that a very dirty hit by Chicago. We'll talk about it. And by the way I've seen some of these disgusting Bears fans celebrating this, the same ones, by the way, that were celebrating Micah's injury, it's just a disgrace, honestly. Like, can't you just win without having to be a jackass, right? And look, I know there's disgusting Packer fans too. There should never be any discourse celebrating an injury or, celebrating when your quarterback gets hurt, right? I would certainly hope that everybody out there would want to play these games at full strength. You know what I mean? Anyway, the bar's in hell for some people. Obviously, losing Jordan Love hurt them. So at the time of Jordan getting hurt, the last 3 quarters, they lose Micah Parsons, Jordan Love, Evan Williams, Christian Watson, Zach Tom, and Josh Jacobs, right? And I know Christian played a little bit in this game. Josh Jacobs played a little bit in this game too, but this all happened in their 2 most important games of the season to date. It's just a insane gut punch and just a ridiculous amount of bad luck, ultimately, right? Anyway, let's talk about some good news. As much as there is a lot of bad, there's some good too, right? Let's talk about players of the game quick. Malik Willis, I thought he deserves a game ball in this one, right? I thought the way he came into this game and literally put the team on his back yet again. I just love the way he plays, man. I love him. He's gritty. He's tough. He ran the ball well again. Thought he made some great throws. The touchdown to Romeo was awesome. He made that insane throw to Jaden Reed after getting, in overtime, by the way, after getting smashed by the Bears offensive lineman. By the way, their 3rd personal foul of the game on their quarterbacks. Again, just, it's just an accident. No, they weren't trying to do anything. Whatever, dude. Come on. If that were flipped around, I mean, you know what Bears fans would be saying, right? I know Malik's going to get signed somewhere in the offseason probably, but I think he just showed again the value of having a dependable backup quarterback because you just never know when your guy's going to get hurt. And again, Jordan, we hope it's just this game and he's not going to miss this week against the Ravens, but honestly, we don't even know if Malik's going to play in this game against the Ravens, right? It could very well be a Clayton Tune game, or maybe they sign somebody off the street. I think Jordan's going to play, but again, you just love having a guy like Malik who can come into the game and really save it for you, right? Next guy, Emmanuel Wilson. Man, again, I thought Josh Jacobs did a nice job battling early in this game, but then he fumbles that ball in the red zone. And, Josh Jacobs he's not a high fumbling guy. He's not fumbled a lot in his career, but he's also not he's not known for being he fumbles. He does fumble. He's not known as being a guy who never fumbles. But again, Emmanuel Wilson, just like in the Vikings game, I thought he ran really, really well in this game. His acceleration looks next level, in my opinion. I think he's a lot more explosive than Josh is right now, at least this season. And I do think, regardless of what happens with Josh Jacobs the rest of the year, I'm almost thinking they should just rest him this week. I really do. I know he wants to play through his knee injury, but the only thing that's going to get better is if he rests. And when you have a guy like Emmanuel Wilson running as well as he is, I feel like we just need to see more carries from Emmanuel Wilson regardless, right? Next one, you guys hopefully don't roll your eyes. Hopefully I be very clear when I say this. Romeo Doubs was a player of the game, the wide receiver version, not the special teams version. This is probably one of the rarest situations that I've seen where he's the reason that they lost the game. You could easily make that argument. But for what he did on offense, he's a big reason why they were in a position to win it in the first place. I thought Romeo looked really shifty in this game. His hands looked good. He had a couple really nice catches in this one. And then the touchdown catch in the third quarter was really, really nice too. He had a couple of other plays he didn't get the ball thrown to him that he was wide ass open. I thought that, and I know Andy Herman's mentioned this, other people have as well, so I don't want to pretend like this is he's been bad by any means, but he's definitely looked like he's been in a bit of a slump lately. He's not been getting a lot of separation. He's had some drops, obviously. I think ever since that Giants game where he just dropped, 4 passes or whatever, he's just kind of looked off since then. So to see him kind of come back in this one and look good, I'm really happy, ultimately. So Romeo's not going to be back next season. I know I had a friend message me about that. Should they re-sign Romeo? Back then I said, I feel like you kind of have to, but ultimately he's kind of fallen off the face of the earth, but they're going to need all their receivers playing at their best at the end of the season. I thought that it was nice to see in this one. Quay Walker, I thought, played well. The PFF grade didn't like him too much. We'll talk about that in a minute, but he had a couple of really nice pressures in this one. He had a couple of TFLs. He kept a lot of those checkdowns too from going into bigger plays, and he stopped him from being bigger gains. Brenton Cox, I want to talk about him really quick too. He was their highest graded player on defense. We'll talk about that too in a minute with the PFF grades, but I want to shout him out for a minute. He was in the backfield on several occasions in this game. He only had one pressure, but I do think he offered some juice in that aspect. And, again, he blew up a couple plays in the backfield, got a couple of really nice plays against Darnell Wright, by the way, who's a really good tackle. So I thought, and this was Brenton Cox's first game back, and I was really impressed. Last guy, Jordan Riley. And if some of you were like, who the hell is Jordan Riley? I didn't know either until about 2 weeks ago when the Packers poached him off the Giants practice squad. He's wearing Kenny Clark's old number, 97. He plays defensive tackle. He had a couple of really outstanding plays in this game in run defense. What I would call 3 stack and shed tackles. I know other people have said the same, but where he reset the line of scrimmage, he made the play in the backfield. I was really impressed with what Jordan Riley did. And he's been active for the last couple games, and he's been pretty bad, to be honest. But in this game, he was active, and there were only 4 defensive tackles active in this game, which I thought was weird. But he played well, and I think seeing some improvement from him. This is a guy who was basically written off. That's why he was on the Giants practice squad. And the Packers saw somebody who could help in run defense, and that's what he did in this one. So massive tip of the cap to our boy Jordan Riley. Okay, let's talk about the defense first overall. We'll talk about the top 5 players on defense. Brenton Cox was number 1, 71 overall grade. Like I said, I liked what I saw from him in the first game back. Again, this is the first time he's played since week 2. I think a lot of people forget this, and it's been brought up a few times on Twitter this week. I certainly didn't forget it because I like Brenton Cox. But last season, in limited snaps, he had the Packers' highest pass rush win rate, and he was over 23% in true pass sets. So he actually was again, limited snaps last year, but he was their best pass rusher for a stretch whenever he was in there, statistically, right? He had a really good camp this season. I do think that he can give the Packers some juice here. This was his first game back. I think he's only going to get better. And they're going to need every bit of depth on that pass rush that they can possibly get. So I thought it was really nice to see Brenton Cox play well in this one. Xavier McKinney was number 2, 68.5. He's stacking some really good games in a row here. I can't help but think over that dropped interception, though, that he had. I think it was the second quarter. I do believe that's the drive where the Bears got their first field goal. So, again, you have to wonder what could have been if X would have caught that pick, right? But anyway, he was in position. He broke it up. 83 tackling grades. That's solid. LVN was number 3, 65.2. He played a lot of snaps in this game. And really, it was the first time since he got hurt against the Bengals. He drew a really important holding call later in the game. He had 3 pressures. He looked good. And I really liked what he did in the interior when he rushed from the interior. I guess it's kind of the new cheetah package since Mike is out, but I thought he looked really good here. They're going to need him, straight up. Nate Hobbs was number 4, 62.8. The Packers did something interesting. I was talking to my cousin before the game. I was wondering what they were going to do at safety, if they were going to leave Bullard in the slot, and then they were going to play Oladapo or Zane Anderson at safety. They ended up playing Bullard at safety, and Hobbs played the slot, which I think in the end made a lot of sense. But I thought he played really well in this game. He tackled well. He showed up in the run game again. He had a near interception too, I believe. We'll talk. I'm jumping ahead. He's the 5th overall player, but I thought Nate Hobbs, again, filled in really well for Javon Bullard in the slot. The thing that I loved about Hobbs' tape when I pulled him up coming in from the Raiders last year, he loves to come up and hit. And I don't know if it was his knee injury early this season or what, but he just did a really bad job of coming up and hitting. And in this game, I thought he did really, really well in run defense. He blew up a couple of screens in this game, too. I thought he played really well. His coverage grade was only 57, and we'll talk about him and Keyshawn a little bit later. But I thought Nate Hobbs did well in the slot when Bullard was at the free safety. So, again, Javon Bullard was the 5th rated player, 61.4. I thought he played better than his grade. But, again, Javon Bullard and Nate Hobbs, they had to step up in this game, and they did. I was really impressed. Defensively, overall, the Packers got 23 pressures in this game without Micah Parsons against a really good offensive line. The first game, when they had Parsons, they had 18.
and Parsons had 6 or 7 of them, I believe. So I know it's more complicated than that. I know pressures are just one thing, right? But I want to point out that, and I'm only saying this because I want to point out how well Hafley did in this game, manufacturing pressure. And they did it by committee. There were, I think, 5 or 6 guys with 2 pressures in this one. Rashawn Gary had 4, which led the team. I thought he actually played well in this game. PFF didn't like him, but the 4 pressures he did have were impactful. He could have had Caleb for a sack, but Caleb did his Houdini act and dodged him. But there were a couple really nice pass rush reps in there from Rashawn Gary, so you'd like to see that. Still no sacks from Gary. He's gone on 8 games without a sack, so that's unfortunate. But pressures are more important than sacks, so there's that. Warren Brinson and Colby Wooden in the defensive tackles, they had 3 pressures each, so I was impressed with them too. Caleb was just off his spot the whole game. Now, again, you would have loved to see a turnover from the Packers. They did get a turnover on downs on defense, but they didn't sack Caleb once, despite that Brinson should have had him on that 3rd and 20 that killed their game. But Caleb did an awesome job in this game of escaping pressure again. Now, a lot of them in this game he threw away. But I thought that, again, the Packers got pressure on him the whole game. He was never comfortable the entire game. There were only a couple plays I can remember off the top of my head that he was actually standing back there like looking through his reads. So, again, this is a good offensive line on the Bears. So for them to get pressure like they did, it's just kind of proof of concept going forward. For 58 minutes, this defense played inspired football. I thought they covered well. They got pressure, like I said. And then to kind of roll back to pressure one more time, they got pressure in clutch situations when they needed it. That's the most important thing about it. Hafley, again, the Bears had 3 points into the middle of the 4th quarter. And I firmly believe that the Bears were going to score like 24 points in this game. I did not think the Packers were going to win this game if the Bears scored more than 25. I thought the Bears were going to score plenty. And before the meltdown, I know they ended up scoring 22 or whatever it was. To be clear, I'm not saying they didn't score 22, but before the meltdown, you saw proof of concept of what this defense can do without Micah. I think when everybody looks back at this game and the defense's performance overall, they're going to remember the collapse. And that's totally fair, right? But what I wanted to see in this game was, could they hold down a good offense without their all-world player in Micah Parsons? And they did. They did. The final touchdown of regulation, that game, let's just talk about that play for a second. Hafley dialed up a dime on 3rd and 4. He sends a blitz. Caleb has to throw it away, right? So then it's 4th and 4. The game's on the line. Even after the onside kick, the game's on the line. Hafley's aggressive. He sends another blitz. Caleb, they get instant pressure, by the way. It's unblocked blitz, which is what you're looking for. He rolls right, throws up a prayer to the back of the end zone. And again, I can't, even just saying it out loud just hurts, guys. He hits the wide receiver in the back of the end zone, an undrafted wide receiver, Jalen Walker or whatever. I forgot his name already. It's a touchdown, right? And I thought Walker made a good catch in that one. Obviously, Caleb made an insane throw. You got to give him credit, right? But it looked like he was throwing it away. But Keyshawn Nixon and Nate Hobbs blew a coverage on that one, right? It's just the fact that play even happened is just so improbable and such bad luck. And I'm not saying luck was the only reason. Like I said, Caleb made a hell of a throw, but Nate Hobbs and Keyshawn Nixon clearly miscommunicated on that play. The guy was wide open in the back of the end zone. And it's clearly they took the inside route. And somebody made this comment, I don't remember who it was, but like in a blitz like that where you send somebody off of the right side, the quarterback's only way of throwing is going to be to the right side, his right. So you have to plan, you have to have somebody over there because that's the only throw that the quarterback can make when he's being rushed to the sideline like that. So again, just super disappointing. It's an incredible error that cost them the game. But again, I want to be clear. I was impressed with what the defense did. They were just so damn close for the game being over. And we would have come into this podcast today, maybe they win 16-9, and we would all be jumping up and down, just joyous about it. The way that performance went for the defense, we'd be giving Hafley his flowers. And again, it took a monumental collapse for the Bears to win that game. So I want to be very clear. We should still be impressed with the defense. I know this isn't the time to play the optimism game, but if we see this type of defensive effort from them the rest of the season, I think they can be dangerous. I really do. and we'll talk about it in the end, but the biggest question I've had about this defense and this team going forward was answered, right? And I know it's one game, right? We'll see how they respond. Maybe this collapse, sets off a chain reaction that we hate, right? But we'll see. Let's flip it over to the offense. Top 5 from PFF. Sean Ryan was number 1 with an 82 grade overall. He had a 78 pass protecting grade and an 82 run grade. We're getting what we wanted to see on the interior in run blocking. Sean Ryan's blocking really, really well in the run game. Anthony Belton's blocking well in the run game. And honestly, Aaron Banks played bad in this game, but he's been pretty good in run blocking as well. So Sean Ryan, tip of the cap to him on this one. Romeo Doubs is number 2. Again, Romeo Doubs, the wide receiver, not the special teamer. 81.2. That's his best game of the year. And you could obviously see it on tape as well. Emmanuel Wilson was number 3, 67.8. Malik Willis, number 4 with a 65 grade. And then Rasheed Walker had a nice game against Montez Sweat, by the way, and Austin Booker, 64.8. He had an 81 pass protecting grade, only a 51 run blocking grade. I mentioned Aaron Banks. He was in the 50s in this game. We saw a much better Aaron Banks for a little bit of a stretch there, but this is 2 games in a row now where Banks didn't look too good. Felt like he was turning it around. This game was not good enough. And you saw it on the rewatch. He got beat several times by Grady Jarrett, who's washed, in my opinion. So you'd hope to see better from him, and hopefully we will. Just disappointing in that aspect. Jordan Morgan started at right tackle. I was surprised at that. I know I didn't do a preview episode, but I was wondering what they would do at right tackle. They clearly wanted to keep the 6th offensive lineman look with Kennard, and they put Jordan Morgan in at right tackle. He had a 63 grade. Not bad. So above average, slightly above average. 74 run blocking grade, but only 50 for pass. I'm sure you guys have seen the clip by now, got blown up on that final sack by Montez Sweat, the one that I think it was in overtime. Offensively, though, guys, let's celebrate for a minute. The Packers didn't punt. Now, maybe we celebrate and cry at the same time. If you told me before the game that the Packers weren't going to punt on offense, I would have told you the Packers won by 2 scores, right? They didn't punt for the second time this season. I'm going to say something. This might break your guys' heart. It certainly blew my mind and broke my heart. This has happened 10 times this year where an offense doesn't punt. 10 times in the NFL this year. The teams in those 10 games are 8-2. Guess who's the team with the 2 losses? The Packers. So the rest of the league is 8-0 when you don't punt. The Packers are 0-2. So just like the Panthers game, the Packers went 0 for 5 in the red zone again. It's almost impossible to be that bad in the red zone when you've been as good as the Packers have been all year. Like I said earlier, you almost have to laugh. It's so bad. The Packers had the number 2 ranked red zone offense going into last week against the Broncos. Packers end up they'd get 384 yards of offense against the, what I would say, fully operational Bears defense with their backup quarterback. So again, if they were just average in the red zone, they would have won this game. They run for 192 yards in this game, which was the most of the season so far. Part of it was Malik Willis, who ran the ball really well himself. He had 44 yards on 10 carries. Emmanuel Wilson had 14 carries for 82. Another, again, I cannot say enough about Emmanuel Wilson in this one. Thought the run game overall looked pretty damn good. The offensive line in general, I thought, played well in this one. In the passing game, Willis threw the ball well. They were 2 plays that he might have wanted back, right? There was a play in the second quarter, I think it was the second quarter, where he hits Musgrave on the deep out. Had he moved, so Musgrave is his first read on that play. You could see it, and it was open, so he took it, right? So it's easy to play the whole hindsight game with these when you watch the all 22, but Watson was running free and open for an easy touchdown across the middle of the field in that one, and you could hear it in the broadcast. Brady was like, oh, you could hear him because he saw how wide open Watson was. And then, overtime, Willis hit Reed on that gorgeous throw over the middle. It was a great play. That got up to the Bears 35, right? But then we get to the 4th down there, and to be fair, this was the right decision to go for it by Matt. I saw somebody on Twitter that was like, I don't know why you don't kick the field goal there. Well, because the Bears were moving the ball well. The Packers defense their morale was busted, right? And if the Bears go down and score a touchdown in that one, the game's over anyway, right? Or if they just get a field goal, you're going to get your second tie of the season. So I like that they went for it on 4th down. But then, Malik Willis fumbles the game. So that was disappointing. There were definitely some inaccuracies from him inside the red zone, but I do think that Willis played well overall. Let's quickly talk Jordan Love in this one. Obviously, he leaves with a concussion. I hope to God he can play this weekend against Baltimore, this next weekend. That hit was dirty, guys. I don't like to play this game on the podcast. I'm certainly not going to be the guy who's crying in these situations, right? But when you watch that play over, Austin Booker lowered his helmet and hit Jordan in the head deliberately, regardless of what these Bears fans want to say. I think he wanted to hurt him there. And believe me, you guys know this too. You guys know Bears fans. If this was switched around to the T and, let's just say Kingsley Enagbare hit Caleb in the head like that, Bears fans would be crying and whining and moaning about that for weeks, right? So again, this is the third game in a row, by the way, that someone's going to get fined for being a jackass against the Packers. Last week it was where Jordan's head got shoved down, and then the game before that was the Bears where Keyshawn gets choked by Luther Burden. And, luckily this one was called in this game. But anyway, I thought Jordan did a nice job before he left. He did look a little bit off. I'm not sure if you guys agree with that. I thought that, he's playing well, but he wasn't, on fire by any means. Just kind of looked like their game plan was a little off. I don't know. It just felt weird. And then obviously the game plan they had was completely thrown out the window when Jordan went out, right? But if he hadn't left, you like to think that they would have at least scored 20 points in this game. So again, just them losing him in the second quarter was just really unfortunate. Again, Romeo had a good game in this one until he didn't. He had 84 yards receiving. That was the highest of the year for him, I believe. Christian Watson, I thought he looked a bit off in this one too. You could tell that they weren't playing him his full complement of snaps. I don't think Reed played all of the snaps either. It looked like we saw a lot of Savion and Bo Melton and Wicks in this one. I don't even think we saw a lot of Matthew Golden in this one. But the Packers didn't throw that much, to be clear. So Luke Musgrave, I thought, played well too. He had a couple really nice catches in this one. They continue to use him the right way, by the way. Him doing the Tucker Kraft stuff was always idiotic, and I thought that it was weird that they kept trying to do those little bubble screen things that Tucker Kraft would get like 15 yards on. I do like Luke Musgrave. I think he's a good player, but the dude can't run after the catch. Every time he catches it, he falls. And that's not hyperbole, by the way, and you guys know that. The way they've been using him the last couple games is the best way to use him, and I thought he had, 40 yards in this game? I thought he looked good in this one. And then Jaden Reed, that insanely clutch play in overtime. Massive tip of the cap to Jaden Reed coming out there and being a warrior again. Anyway, we'll sort of wrap up there with the offense. I said the same thing against the Browns game and the Panthers game. Everything that could possibly go wrong in offense went wrong. So against the Panthers and the Bears, both games that the Packers should have won, by the way, they go 0 for 10 in the red zone. Every other game this season, they've been insanely good in the red zone. So just 2 games, they just glitch in the red zone. It's just really frustrating, guys. All right, let's summarize things. Let's wrap things up here a little bit. To be transparent, too, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier in the podcast. I did go to a concert last night with my wife. I purposely didn't watch the score during the concert. I didn't want to look at the score until the last possible minute. I texted everybody that normally texts me during the game and said, hey, don't say anything about the game until I get home. So we get done with the concert. I believe it was like 9:45, 10 o'clock. And my wife, she breaks rules and she checks the score and she's like, the Packers are winning 16-6, and 5 minutes left. And we're both like, fuck yeah, Sorry if there's any kids around. Obviously at that point we're like, hell yeah, we're going to win this game. That's not going to happen. And I'm assuming that was right before the Bears obviously got their field goal. We pull into the garage. The concert was about 25 minutes away, and my wife says that they tied the game. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. They tied the game? How? And she's like, well, I think Jordan must have thrown a pick. At that point, we didn't know Jordan was hurt. And I did wonder in the back of my head, like, how is it only 16-6 in this game? I felt like Jordan probably got hurt, and sure enough, he did in the second quarter. But anyway, I want to end the podcast on a positive note. Again, you go into Soldier Field against the Bears team they had won 10 games at the time. Now they're at 11. This is probably the most confident that the Bears have been going into a Packers game in 30 years, especially at home. And all that being said, it took a series of near improbable events against the Packers JV team. I know I keep saying that, but it's true. That's what it took for them to win, ultimately. So, again, I want to give them credit. They did make the plays when they needed to make them. But if they want to take a victory lap after this one, go ahead. like I said, they executed when it mattered. They took advantage of the Packers' F-ups, right? But if you're a Bears believer and you leave that game feeling better about your team after that, I'm sorry, you're kind of an idiot. And we're going to hear this week, I can't wait to hear it, all the glazing of the Bears and how they're real contender. And I already heard Kyle Long, who I respect, by the way, say that the Bears are going to win the Super Bowl. I'm like, you guys literally were losing 16-6 to a team that lost their starting quarterback, who just lost Micah Parsons, and you feel better about your team? I'm just blown away by some of the hubris. So again, that being said, they're 11-4. Nobody, including myself, thought the Bears would be there at the beginning of the season. I'm sorry. Nobody thought that was the case. And it's getting harder for the Packers to win the North now. But when the Packers lost Micah, everybody with a microphone, and even a lot of us fans, all of us thought the Packers' Super Bowl chances were dead. And why was that? Because this defense wasn't going to be good enough to keep this great offense in games. That's what all of us said. I said it on this podcast. I was concerned about it. Despite the collapse, you can't leave this game feeling that way anymore. Now, again, that doesn't mean I all of a sudden think they're going to win the Super Bowl. That's not what I'm saying. But you went into this game not knowing how they were going to respond, for one, and two, not knowing if you could actually play defense well enough to beat good teams, right? This defense played admirably against a really good offensive line and running game and a dangerous but inconsistent quarterback in Caleb Williams, right? The Bears' defense was fully operational, or at least as close to it as they've been all season. I know they'll probably say, like, oh, Kyler Gordon wasn't in there and whatever, but I'm not even sure Kyler Gordon was going to start with the way some of their guys have played this year, right? But you put up 384 yards, you move the ball up and down the field with your backup quarterback, your starting running back hurt, your best wide receivers on a snap count, your all-star right tackle out, right? The Packers had every excuse in the book. And Matt LaFleur and this team played 58 minutes of inspiring football. That's what I would call it. So yes, I do feel better about this team going forward than I did going into this game, despite the gut-wrenching loss, right? It sounds like Jordan's going to be okay. I am recording this at 5 o'clock on Sunday night. Matt just did his press conference. He said that something about, Jordan feels better today. It's going to take a few days to see where he's at. But he didn't say that he was concerned about him by the sounds of it. Malik Willis is probably in a little bit worse shape. So if Jordan doesn't go this weekend, like I said, I think he will. But I'm wondering, is Clayton Tune going to take this game? Like, I'm nervous. All that being said, I'm a little concerned about one thing, and that's how is this team going to respond? A devastating loss like this, it's possible they come out against Baltimore completely demoralized and flat, right? I don't think that's going to happen, but it's certainly within the realm of possibility. And I know we hear, especially LaFleur, he always says, we got to go 1-0 every week. 1-0 every week. I'm not looking past the Ravens, and so on and so forth. And right, sometimes I just roll my eyes at that. It's a cliche. We use it in football, and I do think it's the right way to think about it, right? But it could not be more true this week. And I really do think Matt's going to have them ready for this game, and Half is going to have them ready on defense. Despite the loss, the Packers still have a 92% chance to make the playoffs. All they need to do to get in is basically just win out, so they control their own destiny. If they win against the Ravens and they win against the Vikings, they're in. They would finish essentially 11-5-1. And going into the season, by the way, I thought they'd be 12-5. So pretty close to my prediction, ironically. Sorry, that was lame. I would bet that they, in that scenario, right, they essentially, that's the easiest path, right? If they lose one of the games, all they need is for the Lions to lose one. And the Lions play the Steelers right now. Last I looked, it was 3-3. So the Steelers were keeping that game close. Then they play the Vikings, then they play the Bears, right? Now here's the fun part. And this is where I don't want to get too optimistic. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but we need to talk about it. Despite the loss, the Packers can still win the NFC North. It's just a lot harder, like I was saying earlier. If the Packers win their next two games and the Bears lose their next two games, the Packers win the NFC North. It's that simple. Now, here's the fun part. The Packers play the Ravens at home. We know that already. They're favored in that game. I think that they're favored by 3.5 points as of recording this. So I think that even Vegas thinks that Jordan's going to play in that one. Maybe they think that highly of Jordan or Malik Willis, maybe. And then they play the Vikings in Minneapolis. Now, here's the fun part. And it's not fun, by the way. Ironic. And again, I'm not saying this is good, of course, because celebrating injuries is terrible. But like, the Packers' injury luck's been terrible. They might be getting lucky on this particular scenario. So let's talk this through really quick. If the Steelers lose today, so if the Lions win today, and then the Ravens win tonight on Sunday Night Football, the game next week against the Ravens is an exhibition game for them because that game for the Ravens is inconsequential. So in other words, the Ravens would go into next week probably wanting to rest their starters, and that would give the Packers a chance to play against backups, right, to get that win. And then the Vikings, they play them in Minneapolis, like I mentioned. J.J. McCarthy hurt his hand today, and I saw some doctor on Twitter saying it was some sort of fracture, and if that's actually the injury, he's not going to be ready to play in that game. Now, the Vikings did pick up a 16-13 win today, so the Packers might be getting lucky in terms of who's available in these games, right? So, again, that's possible, right? Vegas thinks the Packers are going to win 2 in a row. Now, let's look at the Bears. They have to lose both of their games. Who do the Bears play? They play the 49ers next week. They're favored to lose that game, so the 49ers are favorites. And then they play the Lions in the final game, and the Lions are favored in that game. So here's the ironic part. Vegas thinks this is going to happen. So ironically, you basically have to hit a 4-game parlay, to borrow Andy Herman's word today. Thought that was well said. But that's a totally probable, possible outcome, right? Now, if that happens, if the Packers win the NFC North at 11-5-1, I think that's going to make them the 3 seed. So that's probably going to mean they're going to play the 49ers in the first round of the playoffs. I would love that. I want another shot at the 49ers so bad in this playoff. Like, obviously, I want the Packers to win the Super Bowl, but if they can beat the 49ers in the playoffs this year, or they can go into the playoffs and beat Philly, the two, evil big brothers, the way that they've lost the last couple times in the playoffs against those two teams, I would love that. So I'm not super worried if they get the 3 seed. But let's dial it in here and wrap it up. I know I'm kind of rambling here now. So I think the Packers winning 2 and the Bears losing 2, it's possible. And according to Vegas, it's likely. So if we get the same offense that we've seen basically since that Giants game, and we get the defense we saw in this game, even if it's a little bit worse, right? The Packers are going to go on a little bit of a run here. And it all starts this week against the Ravens. The Ravens, they're getting better. They were in a hellscape earlier this season. They were like 1-6 or 1-5. Got all the way to 6-6. Then they lose to the Bengals. And I think the Steelers beat them too. Yeah, they did. So they're getting better. They're getting healthier. Lamar looks better. But I have very little doubt that the Packers will be able to move the ball in that defense. Their defense has been really bad. So then it all comes down again to how the defense plays against Lamar and Derrick Henry. So we will talk about that game. I'll be back on Friday, maybe Thursday. I might drop a Christmas episode for you guys. We'll see. But speaking of Christmas, I hope you all have a great holiday. We'll be back to preview the Ravens game. Hope you guys all enjoy your family time. I know this Packers loss was not the way any of us wanted to go into the holidays, but there's still lots to be thankful for. We're still, for basically the 800th time in a row, we're talking playoffs at the end of a season for the Packers. And I know it seems like it's supposed to be that way, but there's a lot of teams right now who are in hell. The Lions are in hell right now. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Thanks for having a little therapy with me. I appreciate you guys listening. Give it a like. Go in there and download the episode for me. Send me some questions so we can talk. And I will see you guys this week to preview the Ravens game. Go Pack, go!